Te Urawa Flavell.
Tēnā koe, Mr. Speaker, kia ora tātou katoa. Mr. Speaker, I hope I take a different line to Mr. Garrett's revelations with respect to gang leaders as we talk about this particular bill, in the hope, of course, that we start talking about positive ways to address those sort of issues. Constant haranguing of them will probably not do us too much in favour of trying to rehabilitate some of the issues that they currently face. But be that as it may, as we turn to this particular bill, Mr. Speaker, for many Māori that consider the notion of PIs, some of the younger generation like myself think about a Magnum PI, that television program that used to be on TV. You might remember, Mr. Speaker, was he lived in Hawaii, very unlucky person, and worked when he wanted to, just like Mr. Hughes. He had access to beautiful women, that's questionable. An overflowing beer cabinet, that's questionable. And he had a Ferrari. I'm not too sure about that one for Mr. Hughes. That's I suppose, the notion that some of us have about PIs. Whereas the relationship of Māori to security guards is well established on the other side of things. In fact, I understand that a well-known artist, namely Michael Parekowhai, has even created some sort of art feature that has 15 brown fiberglass figures posing as security guards somewhere in Aotearoa. I'm led to believe that the theme throughout the work is of a stereotypical Māori male standing guard outside bars, clubs and social events. It's a figure that we can all probably quickly identify with. It's a study in being staunch. Mr. Speaker, this bill puts together the two categories dealing with private investigators and Security Guards Act of 1974. It is putting in place measures to ensure that both PIs and security guards are both appropriately qualified to undertake their work and that their conduct is consistent with the public interest. Mr. Speaker, the important distinguishing point about this bill, however, is not just that it is not just restricted to private investigators and security guards. In reviewing the licensing requirements for the security industry, the bill now brings within its fold a much wider group. Private investigators, security technicians, that is those who fix burglar alarms or security cameras, security consultants, the agents who offer confidential document destruction, property guards, personal guards, and crowd controllers, what we might more commonly call bouncers. While the scope of people targeted is broadened, there is more flexibility about the requirement for licensing renewal and certification. Indeed, it's a massive jump from the expectation of being subject to an annual review to now having that done every 5 years. Mr. Speaker, the other major aspect of the bill outside of the licensing changes relates to the policy goal that the conduct of those in the security sector is consistent with the public interest. For a classic example of this, we only need to think about the events that shook Aotearoa in October 2007. We might remember that QC Paul Williams was one of the first off the blocks to call for private investigators to look into the facts of the police raids that took place in Ruatoki that year under the auspices of the Suppression of Tourism Act. In speaking out, Mr. Williams challenged the state. He issued a statement well known in Māori circles, "Waiho mā te ture anō te ture e patu. Let it be for the law to beat itself up." His urgent recommendation was that all New Zealanders should be concerned at the breach of rights that unfolded in the nation of Tūhoe. He suggested that there should be some private investigators to get all sorts of statements to bring action to the High Court for exemplary damages and compensation for all of those who were badly treated. And so we saw with the events of October 2007 perhaps a new environment when private investigators might well be considered a useful investment for Māori to call on for support and expert advice. Mr. Speaker, this bill then makes an important start, as I say, in regulating the private security sector. It brings into being a conversation about professionalism, integrity and respect values which are at the very essence of any aspect of the security industry. The Māori Party believes, however, that further amendments are needed to ensure appropriate standards of conduct are set and maintained. As a core requisite of standards of conduct, we would recommend that anti-racism training for private security personnel needs to be included in the Code of Conduct when developed and implemented. This bill introduces more objective criteria in determining who will get licensed. The licensing authority will retain discretion to assess suitability of applicants, but the prevailing emphasis, Mr. Speaker, is on consistent values and standards by which we come to regard with this profession. Within these criteria, we would hope that cultural competency would be elevated to be a significant component of the registration of competent and licensed private investigators and security guards. We will be looking forward to more detail coming out at the Select Committee phase around the licensing process, namely who gets approved. While certain categories of people under both the current Act and the provisions of the bill are disqualified from applying, there needs to be a more robust mechanism than conviction of certain offences to determine if someone is suitable to be a licence holder or to be certified. And so we will be strongly recommending those who have had experience in this sector, those who are currently practising within it, those who have left the industry, or those who have been at the receiving end of the management and operations of personnel to be involved. For example, if there are people who have had unsatisfactory experiences with security guards or perhaps bear resentment towards the activities of a private investigator, it is vital that we hear their views alongside those who may be more positively inclined. Mr. Speaker, a key principle for the Māori Party in coming to this bill is that we want to be absolutely certain that the power of security staff is appropriately balanced to ensure the rights and safety of the public. Clarity around these standards is critical to ensure both the credibility of the security industry while also adhering to due protection of the public. So at the heart of the issue is the role of power and control. While security workers and other personnel across the sector don't have the same power to remove a person's liberty as does a police officer, they do hold aspects of power in their roles and need to be duly responsible for, with that power. Feedback that we've picked up from the sector is a desire to see a code of conduct actually developed and used to establish and maintain industry standards. This has never been done as yet, even though there has been provision in the 1974 Act, I'm led to believe. A code of conduct would provide a mechanism by which to monitor and review the standards of practice, adherence to a code of conduct of licence and certificate holders. Mr. Speaker, this will be especially important given the licensing period is now for 5 years, and also to be able to be better regulate the conduct of those who are already licensed and certificate holders. There are many issues and experiences that come with this bill that will benefit from more scrutiny, more intense scrutiny at the Select Committee stage. In light of the need for more information and indeed more analysis, the Māori Party is happy to support this bill at its first reading. Kia ora tātou.